Good evening. We're going to call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Thorburn, seconded by Councilor McDonald. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Are there any announcements from members of council? Councilor Thorburn.
Actually, I have two. And the first one is, please, just to remind the residents that clocks go forward this Sunday. And when you change your clocks, please change your smoke detector batteries. On the weekend, we had lost 2 lives in Hilton fire. And 3 out of 5 deaths in the fire service, there's either no smoke detector or not working. And I do know that the Bridgewater Fire Department, when they respond to residents, check them out to see if they're there and won't leave until they're working. So our department serves full remarks for that. But even more important, today is International Women's Day, and the theme is today's Choice to Challenge. And I think it's an important day, and just want to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Thorburn. Any other announcements from Councilor McDonald?
Just wanted to add to Councilor Thorburn's announcement about International Women's Day. I've been asked a number of questions about what it's like to be a woman in municipal government. And I've been very, very fortunate to be able to share a very positive experience. And so as much as this day is about the incredible women of our community, of our country and world, I'd also like to make a very quick acknowledgement to the men sitting around this table who are making change. Today and for the past 8 years, I have had the extreme privilege of sitting around this table and being treated as nothing but an equal. It's never been asked for. I've never had to have an uncomfortable conversation to lead to that place where I feel like I'm an equal. It's always just been the way it is. I'm very proud to be able to say that this council is a fantastic example for other councils and for the women and men of our community. And I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor McDonald. Any other announcements? Council. Oh, with no further ado, we'll go down to our new staff introductions. We have Mark Powell, who is our Economic Development Officer. And I don't know if he's introducing himself or...
Yeah, I think Mark has a little slide deck he's going to do.
I heard Mark, he had like a 15-minute PowerPoint presentation on what it's like to be Mark Powell.
So I'll just start by saying that Mark, councillors met Mark last week during our discussion session. I thought it'd be good to formally introduce him at council. And Mark started, I believe, last week as 2 weeks ago, as our Economic Development Officer. So a new position with the town. And we're excited to have Mark in this role. And he is working remotely right now and making his way to Bridgewater over the next couple weeks, and he'll be visible in Town Hall starting perhaps the middle of April, I believe it is. So I'll just leave it to Mark to introduce himself.
Thank you, Tammy, for the introduction. Mayor David, Deputy Mayor Andrew Tanner, the councillors Stacy, Mike, Cheryl, Jennifer, and Wayne. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you all officially. As I had, as you said, an opportunity to work with you last week. I'll just be brief because I know there's a budget to discuss, and I just wanted to say I'm really looking forward to working with all of you through Tammy. I know the 2021-22 strategic plan is really an excellent support. I know the plan and my role as the EDO suits it very well because I have a diverse background, successful background building local communities, building financial capacity and strong groups. So I think there's a lot can be done this year. And it's I think it's a really exciting time now for Bridgewater with all that's going on. And I'm hoping to sort of bring that all into focus in the role that I have now. So thank you for the welcome, and I look forward to seeing you all in person and in the council chambers when my partner Debbie and I come out of the bubble. And it may be as early as the first week of April. So I look forward to seeing you then.
Great, thank you, Mark, and on behalf of council and the staff of the town of Bridgewater, welcome. Looking forward to having you on board.
Thank you very much.
And a year later, I still have not learned that I don't need to look over my shoulder because nobody is behind me. I will be so glad when there's not that. I don't see any delegations to the public, so we'll go down to, we have minutes of February 22nd, 2021 council meeting. Any errors or omissions there? Councilor McDonald?
Sorry, I was going to move to approve them.
Okay.
Ahead of myself.
Motion to approve them. Councilor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Our next order of business is a presentation from Nova Scotia Power. There's lots of people on the screen here. And so they're going to give us a presentation on smart meters. I know that people in the community have questions, and so I thought it was a good idea to have Nova Scotia Power give us a little bit of information. So I'll turn this over to Mary, I guess. You're leading the charge on this, so
That's right.
yeah, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mayor Mitchell, council, and staff. First, I'd like to say, does my audio sound okay? If someone could acknowledge that.
Yep, we're good.
Awesome. Okay, so thanks again for allowing us this opportunity to present to you about our smart meter project. We got this close to doing it in person, so hopefully next time we'll be able to do it in person. But I have my colleagues with me virtually this evening, and we've put together what we feel you need to know. So as some of you know, my name is Mary Black, and I'm a Government Relations Advisor at Nova Scotia Power. And with me virtually for this presentation are Amy Woodford, who is the Manager of Customer Relations, and she will be telling you about the communication channels that we have for elected officials. Also with me is Matt Drover, and Matt is our Senior Director of Transmission, Distribution, and Delivery, and he will be speaking to why we are doing this project across the province. And also with us is Jamie Chip, and Jamie is the Senior Program Manager for the Smart Meter Project, and he will be speaking to some of the specific details about the project. I will be sharing some slides momentarily, and once we have completed them, we will be available to answer any questions that you may have, and certainly any discussion around this project. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And Amy, can you confirm that you can see the opening slide, please?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So I'm going to move to the next slide and hand the microphone over to Amy. There we are.
There we go. Great. Thanks, Mary. Good evening, and thanks very much, Council, for the opportunity to have a chat. As Mary mentioned, wanted to briefly touch on some of the services that our government relations group offers to elected officials and staff such as yourself. So we do have a dedicated government relations email address. Some of you may be familiar with that and have used it in the past. We also have a dedicated phone line as well for elected officials and staff. And really the intent of having those dedicated channels is to assist you in answering any questions that you may get from your constituents. And so it provides a direct link into our overall customer care center, and it provides an opportunity for you to get the information to work one-on-one with your constituents. So some of the inquiries that we get that you may encounter are issues or inquiries related to tree trimming or general service requirements, or things more sensitive in nature, like making payment arrangements and assisting with paying bills and that sort of thing. From time to time, we will as well push out proactive information. For example, such as today, we are presenting information regarding the smart meter project. We also will provide proactive information if there's a storm coming and walking you through some of the steps we may be taking to prepare for the storm. As a reminder, with respect to the dedicated email and phone lines, those are answered from Monday to Friday, regular business hours. The phone is answered on a 24/7 basis. However, if there is an urgent inquiry, we would ask, especially if it's outage related, that you direct your phone calls to our customer care outage center. All of that to say is we are here and available to assist you, and I think I'm handing it over to Matt now with an overview of the smart meter project.
Thank you, Amy. So Matt, you have the microphone now.
Thanks, Mary. Just checking to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Matt Drover. I'm the Senior Director of Transmission and Distribution and Delivery Operations at Nova Scotia Power. And I really wanted to thank you again for having us here this evening. We're very excited to talk to you tonight about our smart meter project and all the benefits that it's going to bring to the province of Nova Scotia. And really, the main thing that is driving this project is our desire to improve customer service to all of our customers in Nova Scotia. And we do interview our customers on a regular basis, get surveyed information from them. And on a regular basis, we hear from customers top 3 things that they would like to see from us is stable rates, improved reliability, and clean energy. And we feel that the smart grid project, the smart meter project, enables all of those things. From a stabilized rate perspective, we've been working very closely with the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board since 2014 to provide stable and predictable rates for all of our customers in Nova Scotia. We created a rate stabilization program back in 2014, and for the last 7 years, we've had stable rates in the province of Nova Scotia. Very minimal increases and very predictable for all of our customers. And we really want to continue that trend going forward. It's important for us that we listen to our customers and we continue to stabilize rates. And introducing smart meters will help with that enabling by giving customers the power to understand their energy consumption and potentially use energy in a different way to stabilize rates. We're really excited to talk more about that further in the presentation. From a reliability standpoint, again, very important to our customers. You hear that again and again in terms of how important power is to people and to have it at a moment's notice. And we look at weather on a regular basis. Weather is our #1 cause for power outages. High winds will cause trees to fall into our power lines. And looking at the last 5 years, we've seen an increase in the number of hours each year where winds have been above 80 kilometers an hour. And 2019, when we had Hurricane Dorian, we actually hit the record of the most number of hours where winds were above 80 kilometers an hour. So we're really focused on improving reliability, making sure that the investments that we make will harden our system so that when winds do get above that threshold, that we'll have less power outages going forward. And the way we do that is that we invest $100 million per year on asset upgrades and tree trimming, a vegetation management program, to make sure that the trees are far enough away that they don't fall into the power lines when we do get high winds. From a clean energy perspective, the environment is top of people's minds as well. We hear that again and again from our customers. And we're really focused on moving to a new renewable future as we introduce new clean forms of power going forward. And we introduced an integrated resource plan last year, again with the Utility and Review Board, which outlined our plan to get to the provincial and federal government goals of energy production in 2030. I'm really focused on meeting those goals over the next 10 years. And again, smart meters will help enable that going forward. And the next slide. The smart meter project is a significant capital investment for Nova Scotia Power. We're investing $133 million as part of the capital investment, but the actual meter upgrades do not cost customers anything. The meters themselves will be replaced for each customer, no additional cost to those customers. We're replacing all 515,000 meters across the province and aiming to have that done by the end of the year. And in doing that, all of the existing analog and digital meters that are out there today will be replaced with a smart meter. And these smart meters will be measuring energy consumption on a regular basis, providing that information to us at Nova Scotia Power, as well as to customers to enable them to do things differently from a power consumption standpoint. And in addition to that, as part of that rate stabilization program, we're actually, over the next 20 years with smart meters, enabling a $38 million savings in customer rates going forward. Over 20 years, that $38 million will be saved for all customers. And the main reason for that is that we will no longer need to be physically reading meters. All the smart meters that we'll be installing will be sending that meter information automatically back to Nova Scotia Power. So a very exciting project that will implement the feedback that we've been receiving from our customers on improving reliability, stabilizing rates, and introducing a cleaner energy future. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie Chip.
Thank you, Matt. Jamie, just move to your opening slide, and we're handing you the microphone.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Mary, and thank you, Mayor Mitchell and members of council for the opportunity to present this evening. I'm gonna keep my remarks fairly brief and concise, I hope. And but if you do have questions during the course of the presentation, please jump in. And at the end, if you have questions, happy to take them at that time as well. And if you do have any questions that you think of after this evening, you can always forward them to Mary, and she'll make sure that the questions get to me and the team of the Smart Meter project. So my name is Jamie Chip. I'm the Senior Program Manager. I've been with the AMI project for 4 years now. So really exciting investment. And today, what we typically do is we like to present to councils when we're invited, just before we start installs of smart meters in their community. And it gives us an opportunity to answer any questions that council may have. And it also allows us to give you the information that you need in the event your constituents have questions. So today I'm going to be talking about the technology in the project. I'm going to be talking about the benefits, going to be talking about the installation process, and lastly, some closing facts on smart meters. So the first slide here, just a little bit about the project itself and the technology. As of March 8th, today, we had 331,263 meters installed across Nova Scotia. So as Matt mentioned, our target is to get to just above 500,000, and our target right now is to have that done by later this summer. So we expect to be materially complete the mass installation of meters later this summer, and that's very exciting news, because once we get all of our meters installed, we can start to activate the technology that reveals some of the neat functionality that was alluded to in Matt's opening statements. So first of all, just to explain a little bit about the technology. Smart meters, they look very similar to a digital meter that many people have on their homes today. But the difference, of course, is that they measure energy consumption much more finite detail, 15-minute increments. And they also measure a bunch of other information related to energy, things like voltage. They have there's an alarm on the meter, so that if we have power outages, it can tell us about that. And the way it does that is it communicates wirelessly. So the meters themselves employ what's called a mesh network technology. So the meters, they're taking snapshots of energy consumption and other information related to energy usage in 15-minute increments. And then every 6 hours, what the meters do is they'll take that payload of information and they'll send it back to Nova Scotia Power wirelessly. The meters themselves utilize other meters. So one meter can send a message, it'll hop to one meter, and eventually it'll find what we call a connected grid router, which is a pole-mounted device that you may or may not have seen around your community. They're about the size of a small piece of carry-on luggage, and they're white, and they're mounted quite high up on poles. So if you weren't looking very carefully, you might mistake them for a street light. But we are installing about 544 of those connected grid routers, those wireless devices that collect the information from the meters. We're installing that many across the province, and in Bridgewater and the surrounding area, we're installing about 30 of those devices. So I'm sure that if you're walking down in the downtown area of Bridgewater and you're looking up at the right pole, you might see one of these devices. Those devices transmit that information securely back to Nova Scotia Power, back to our data center, and then that usage is used to help us give more accurate billing, but also that information is used and can be passed on to customers to help them make more informed energy choices. Next slide, Mary. So this is a little bit about some of the benefits of smart meter technology. And as I mentioned, one of the key benefits is that you're going to be able to view your daily usage, and you're going to be able to view it in fairly precise increments. And so our plan right now is to have a web portal that customers are going to be able to access, and they're going to be able to go in and see when and how they're using their information to help them better manage their electricity costs. There'll also be the option for customers to set up notifications to help control costs, and that'll be in the form of billing alerts. And some of the billing alerts will be mid-bill cycles. So if your usage was trending higher, that alert would let you know that you're trending higher than normal, and perhaps give you an opportunity to turn your thermostats down or modify your energy usage. Make sure you stay on budget. Of course, quicker response when the power goes out. So Matt, of course, manages a huge team of energy professionals, field resources that their main job is when the power goes out, they swing into action, particularly during major outages like Dorian and other situations when a storm takes down and trees take down lines. And so the smart meters have the ability to send a power off notification when they lose power. And so that's going to be really valuable, of course, when the power goes out, but more importantly, it's more important when we start restoring power. So what happens is, you may have trees down on a line. It might take a whole section of feeder and a whole neighborhood will go out, and we'll do that repair work and restore that whole neighborhood. But there might be one or two customers at the very end of the line that have trees down just on the loops to their houses. And so what smart meters will do is it will allow us to detect what we call nested outages. So these outages that are kind of embedded in another larger outage. So we may fix the problem and think that we've got everybody restored, and there may be one or two houses at the end of the line that have something very specific to their line going into their house. And so this will let us know once the power comes back up, we'll be able to see that the power is not restored there, and then we can send folks out to get that power restored quicker than we would without having that information. One of the other benefits is faster connections. So all of our single-phase meters, not all of the meters, but most of the meters, most of the vast majority of them, which are single-phase meters, do have connect-to-disconnect switches built into the meter itself. And what that means is when a customer is getting a hard connect or moving out with a disconnect, we can remotely connect the power to a particular premise. And of course, with regards to meter reading, this will greatly simplify billing for customers. There's no property visits required to read your meter, less incidents of estimated meters, and of course, during big storms and power outages when it's really difficult to read any meters, we'll still be able to get those reads and properly bill customers. And then of course, advanced support. So our customer care team is now going to have a whole suite of new tools that they can use when they're working with customers on billing issues. Maybe it's a high bill and customers wondering why. Now we can have our customer care reps swing into action and actually pinpoint the usage that might be driving that the high bill. Just the other day, we had a customer reach out to us who recently had a hot tub installed. And if any of you know anything about hot tubs, the salespeople will tell you that they're very energy efficient, but they don't exactly tell you that they do use quite a bit of electricity. And so this particular customer had called into our customer care line, and the rep had reached out to me, and I said, well, let's look at the usage, and you could practically tell by looking at the daily usage when that hot tub was installed. And so we were able to have a very good discussion with the customer, talk about when they had their hot tub installed, and then tell them about what that was doing to their energy usage. And they felt more informed. And keep in mind, that's before we're even exposing that information to customers that they can go in and look themselves. This is something that our customer care reps can do today. So that's very very exciting in terms of being able to service customers better. Next slide, Mary. So a little bit of the process itself. So Tribus Services is the company that Nova Scotia Power has has contracted with our authorized contractor for smart meter upgrades across the province. They've been doing this since October of 2019. Very experienced organization, and they do specialize in smart meter installation. They have a lot of the tools and safety precautions and safety procedures to undertake this task. And they've currently they have 2 warehouses set up in the province, one in Dartmouth in the Burnside Industrial Park, and another in New Glasgow. And from there, they have multiple crews that go out. They drive co-branded vehicles, so they do have the Nova Scotia Power logo on them. They also have the Tribus Service logo on them, and they all carry identification and the right safety personal protective equipment. And we did have to stand down back when COVID first reared its head back in March of last year. And once we got a better understanding of the safety guidelines put forth by the Nova Scotia Chief Medical Officer, we were able to retrain our personnel and get them back in the field in the June timeframe. And so they, of course, wore PPE before COVID came along, but now they've got some added PPE that they include in their gear, including masks and instructions on how to maintain physical distance and keeping interactions with the public, of course, brief. Typically what happens during an installation is the installer will knock on the door of the customer, then step back, and they will let the customer that they know that they are representative of Nova Scotia Power, that they're there to install their new smart meter. If the customer for some reason doesn't want the meter installed at that time, we can book and schedule an appointment with the customer. If the customer doesn't want it installed at all, the customer does have the option of opting out. We have had a small percentage of customers that for various reasons just don't want the new technology and are more comfortable with their older meter, and that is their option to opt out if they so choose. The meter installer then, if the customer is okay with changing out the meter, they'll proceed to the meter base, and which is usually around the side of the house, and they'll safely remove the old meter, record the out read of the old meter, install the new smart meter, record the in read on the smart meter, and then tidy up and clean up. And the whole process takes about 15 minutes usually. And there is a slight power outage at the point when the meter is removed and before the new meter is installed. But that we tell customers that you might be without power for 5 minutes, but usually it's usually much less. But that's what we tell customers. And of course, before anyone gets on the doorstep, we do have lots of communications tools that we use. We usually send a direct mail piece, very similar to the one that you see in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, to an entire community. So it's an on-address mail drop. We also have
Jamie, I
the
think
councils. Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. It just froze up for a moment. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so that's how we tell customers we're coming. Once we're there, we tell them that we're there, and then when we wrap up, we let them know we're leaving. If the customer's not at home, and so this is probably more prevalent pre-COVID, but certainly there's lots of people working from home these days. But if the customer's not at home, they don't need to be at home in order for the meter changer to take place. But what the meter installer will do is they will hang a door hanger on the customer's door, let them know that they are doing the install. Once the install is complete, they'll leave another door hanger that says that they were there and changed out the meter, and there's phone numbers and web addresses on those communication devices to let people know when and where we came. Last slide, please, Mary. These are just some quick facts about smart meters. So safety is always our top priority. The meter we are installing is an Itron meter. Itron is a very has a great reputation in terms of meter manufacturers. The meter we're installing is based on the Centron model, which there are over 80 million installed across North America, so a very experienced manufacturer. The meters that we are installing themselves are manufactured specific to Nova Scotia Power and specific to our specifications, and they are approved by Measurement Canada before they are allowed to be installed in anywhere in Canada. Any meter that's installed in Canada has to be approved by Measurement Canada, which regulates electricity usage of devices that measure electricity usage in Canada. And so our meters have been approved by Measurement Canada. They are then tested at the factory before they leave, according to a Measurement Canada specification. So in addition to the meters themselves being, the model being approved, they are tested before they leave the factory, sample tested, and those test results are sent to us. And if everything looks good, we let the shipment proceed. But in the event that some of those tests don't come back as being compliant with Measurement Canada, we do have the option of rejecting shipment. And I'm happy to say that we have now taken delivery of all the meters we intend to install in Nova Scotia. We haven't had any that have failed any of the sample testing that is required due to Measurement Canada regulations. So everything, both from the model number right down to as they roll off the manufacturing line, is set to make sure that the meters are accurate and safe. There's some additional information here on some of the encryption standards. I won't profess to be a cybersecurity expert, but we do have lots of them that work at Nova Scotia Power, and they do ensure that our technology is up to spec when it comes to cybersecurity. And lastly, in terms of health, our smart meters do meet Health Canada's Safety Code 6, which is basically the standard for any device that sends a radio frequency, uses RF communications in Canada, and they are many times lower than the safe exposure limit that is set by Health Canada. And that's been verified both in testing done by the manufacturer, certification through Health Canada. In addition, we have employed an occupational hygienist, an instructor from Cape Breton University, who has done an independent study of an independent test, an independent study of just our meters, and that confirmed, of course, everything that had been committed to both from the manufacturer and some of the certifications that had been received. So that's the factual walk down on smart meters, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this point.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to hand the microphone back to our hosts.
Thank you. Questions from members of council? Councilor McDonald.
Are these meters going on both residential and commercial properties?
Yes, that's right. So all meters in Nova Scotia. There are a couple of classes of industrial meters that are not being replaced, but that has more to do with the requirements of some of our industrial customers. But the plan of record is that materially all meters will be changed out for both businesses and residential domestic customers in the province.
Other questions? Councilor Frazier.
Yeah. I know you did mention if the customer wasn't home at the time you put a door knocker on. Is there cases where the customer didn't know that the installation was taking place and chose not to have a new meter put on? And then, because I know I've heard from people say, well, I didn't really have a choice, or I came home and it was installed. So I just wondered what your comments would be when you can't reach somebody at home and still go forward with the installation.
Yeah, so perhaps I'll talk a little bit about our opt-out process. So customers have the option of opting out of smart meters at any point. It doesn't have to be during or immediately preceding an installation of a smart meter. So if you call Nova Scotia Power, our customer service line at any time and let them know that you want to opt out, they will record that preference in our system, and then that will remove them from the list from our meter installation vendor, and we won't replace that meter. There have been a couple of instances where customers have opted out, and for technical reasons, their preference wasn't recorded or didn't make its way to the installation vendor. But if that happens, we will go out and certainly remove the smart meter and make sure that the meter reflects the customer's preference. We have had about, I want to say 15,000 customers that have opted out thus far that don't want smart meters, as I mentioned, for various reasons. And I can probably count on one hand the customers that we've mistakenly put a smart meter on that didn't want one. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Is there, just if I may ask another question, is there any additional fees for somebody who chooses to opt out and not have the installation, the new smart meter? Is there any additional charges for them to opt out?
Yeah, so the decision when the UARB, which is our regulator, approved the project, the AMI project, the implementation of smart meters, as Matt mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, they do have a net benefit for customers overall, and that's largely as they reduce costs for the utility and provide benefits to customers. For customers that choose to opt out, at some point in the future, when we do a general rate application, the regulator has said that we should be communicating with customers that there will be a charge for opting out, and that charge is not, that doesn't have anything to do with opt out. It has mostly to do with the fact that we still have to employ people and maintain vehicles to actually go out and physically read those meters. So the regulator has directed us to perform that on a cost recovery basis, so there will be some charge in the future once we do a general rate application, and that will be reflective of the cost to send a person out in a vehicle to actually read that meter physically. Right now there's no charge because we haven't filed a general rate application, and so customers that opt out today, there's no charge until such time as that is filed with the UARB.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yes. How many jobs will be lost when the new meters are installed, and will they be re-employed, the meter readers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have about 50 meter readers in the province, and one of the first things that we did, gosh, I want to say about 4 years ago, is we established a working committee with those meter readers and their union, and we put in place plans that have been, we put some of those plans in action already, but the general gist of the plan was to make sure that we were able to find different opportunities within Nova Scotia Power for all of those meter readers that are permanent employees of the company. And so many of them have already received their next assignments. They haven't yet been released for meter reading because we continue to read meters manually, but many of them, I believe upwards of 90% of the meter readers have their next assignment. And I don't know, Matt, if you want to comment on that. I know you're very, very close to that activity, but basically we've been working on this for quite some time, and our plan is to find new homes for most of those resources.
Yeah, I think you covered it, Jamie, but the only other thing to add is that the company did take that commitment very seriously. We committed to the meter readers as soon as we got the approval from the UARB to go forward with the project that we would find new positions for all of that team. And as Jamie mentioned, we have done a great job of that. And at the end of this, 100% of the people that are part of that team will have a new job.
One more?
Yep.
Of the 325,000 smart meters to be installed, how many are actually installed today, as of this day?
331,000 are installed. I think I mentioned that.
Out of the
331,263.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fisher?
Yeah, it's just over 500,000 in total.
Okay.
And 353?
Yep.
331?
31, close.
Yeah.
Just going back to asking customers, and one of the three priorities was the stability in the rates. Just so with the new smart meters, is there a guarantee from Nova Scotia Power that there will not be an increase in rates for a period of time? Can you confirm that with this implementation of the smart rates? Smart meters?
So maybe I'll take that one. So the general rate application that Jamie is talking about consists of many different rates and costs that make up those for Nova Scotians. As I mentioned at the beginning, we stabilized rates at 14, so the increase is very low. And the 38 million that we will be receiving as benefits from smart meters will help stabilize that going forward. But that whole rate application process is what the UARB, and we have to submit all of our costs and all the various aspects of producing power to them, and then they decide ultimately what the rates will be.
Okay.
So there's many more pieces to this than just smart meters.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Caldwell.
What's the primary concern or misconception that residents may have about the project that we may hear about?
Well, I think there is a small but very vocal group of customers that have opinions related to smart meters, related to potential health concerns. As I've mentioned previously in talking about some of the facts related to smart meters have been around for a long time. They've been installed in Canada since 2007. And most provinces already have smart meters, so we're one of the last jurisdictions in Canada to roll out smart meters. And I think that's a good thing. It means that we have the latest and greatest technology, and we get to learn from other utilities that have gone before us. But I think a lot of the conceptions, early days in some of those earlier installations in Canada, didn't do a particularly good job of explaining what smart meters were or how they worked. And so we've been certainly trying to put a lot more effort at Nova Scotia Power into explaining facts about smart meters, talking to folks like yourselves around how they work and or how they don't work. And I think on the facts, they're like any other piece of technology that you have in your home today. Things get better over time, and we're pretty confident that they're going to be able to deliver the benefits that we say they can deliver. As I said, a lot of those misconceptions, some of them related to health, some of them related to things people read on the internet, but a lot of them had to do with some of the earlier implementations of smart meters in Canada and other parts of the U.S. Didn't do a particularly good job of explaining how they worked and much about them. So we're trying to remedy that with presentations like today.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
For Jamie, I guess, but what happens if someone or a new homeowner wants a smart meter in, say, 5 years' time? Is there a cost?
No. So the smart meters are now they will become the standard meter for Nova Scotia Power. And any new buildings or new homes that are constructed going forward will get a smart meter at no charge.
Councillor Conklin.
When do you anticipate having installation complete in Bridgewater?
Bridgewater, I believe, starts on March the 15th, and I don't have the exact end date right here in front of me. But typically, there's about 35,000 meters in Bridgewater and the surrounding area, and we install just under 2,000 meters a day. So I would expect that will take probably inside of 3 months.
Councillor McDonald.
So the meter on my house has probably been there since the 70s when the house was built. It's older than me. But I've never heard of anyone having a meter repaired. But with new technology comes some new challenges. What is the lifespan? What do you anticipate for repairs or replacements? And will that come with a cost for homeowners?
So no cost for the homeowners. The meters themselves do have a 20-year useful life. And so the meter manufacturer that we have gone with provided us what's called it's called a life test report, an accelerated life test report. So they They administer a lot of tests, some of them in labs, some of them in outdoor kind of real life conditions. They expose the meters to heat, they expose them to cold, and generally those tests are meant to replicate and estimate how long those meters would last in the form of an engineering study. And so the meters that we're purchasing, of course, are based on a prior model that we are very familiar with and have been installing at Nova Scotia Power for about 10 years now. So the new meters we're installing are projected to have a 20-year useful life, but there are meters in the province of Nova Scotia that are on people's homes that have been there for upwards of 30 and in some cases even 40 years. So we expect the meters to last at least 20 years, and hopefully they'll last even more.
My question, I think I saw that, or you mentioned it, Jamie, in your presentation. So these meters aren't constantly sending a signal, right? It's every 6 hours, you said, they kind of like ping their neighbor, and it goes down to whatever, to the end of the street. So they're not constantly emitting a signal, because I know, back to Councillor Caldwell's question, that tends to be the issue that we've heard around this table is, I don't want this thing sending off radio waves constantly. So is that correct? That's just every 6 hours?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So the meters themselves are taking snapshots of power usage every 15 minutes, and then every 6 hours they take their payload of information. And from a data perspective, it's not a ton of data. It's a very small data package that's then sent wirelessly 4 times a day, so every 6 hours, and the total cycle time of the meter on average is about 3 minutes. So it's basically transmitting for not a very long period of time, and so yeah, that's the long and the short of it.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from members of council? That's great. So thank you so much for your presentation today. That was very informative, and I appreciated the questions from council as well. So I'm sure the public that were listening or watching or will contact us later, no doubt, we have some additional information, which is great. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be sending an email tomorrow morning with some follow-up items for all of you to have, including some of the frequently asked questions. So thank you for those.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, moving along, our next item is correspondence for information. We have a letter from the Nova Scotia Firefighters Benevolent Fund, a request for financial assistance. There's no specific dollar amount request in here, so this is really here for information to kind of determine where council wants to go. We could write them back and inform them of the grant process we have, and ask them to make a specific request through the grant intake process, or we can come up with something else. But whatever we come up with here, we'll relay that back to them. I don't know if
That's what I was going to suggest.
okay.
Maybe we could contact the fire department, the chief, because he should have some information on this, and maybe he may be able to help us with that fund.
In terms of
Not in terms of how much, but some more information. Because the fire service in Nova Scotia would be involved with this, I would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to add? Did you have anything to add? You look like you had a question.
No, I'm just going to say, if council opts to refer to the grant program, so you budget on normally around $29,000 a year.
Yeah.
We could request, we could consult with the fire chief in terms of the information required to support the application.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that the fire department in our town gets notified of what's happening with this fund.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, we can copy them on that.
Okay.
Does anyone object to us suggesting to them that they go through the regular grant intake process, and then we can
I think
CC the fire chief?
that makes the most sense to go
Yeah.
to the grant app process.
Yeah, especially when there's not a specific dollar amount, we don't know what the need is. Okay, so we'll respond with that. Our next item is correspondence for action. United Way Lunenburg County extension of free Bridgewater transit bus programs.
Yeah, so this one here, council last year entered into a memorandum of understanding with the United Way. And it was to provide up to a maximum of 2,000 passes. And it had a dollar value of $3,600. And that was for the United Way to distribute those passes to individuals in need who normally wouldn't be able to afford to buy a bus pass or bus ticket. The United Way, based on the numbers that Mackenzie provided me with, there's been approximately 1,200 of those used. So they expire March 31st and they're no longer usable on the bus. And the request is for council to continue with this program again in the 21-22 fiscal year. And it suggests beyond, but council's committed to reviewing it on an annual basis to determine whether or not they wish to continue. So that would be the request, and that would be the equivalent dollar value in terms of revenue. It's equivalent to $3,600 in revenue that we would not realize with the program.
Questions? Does the United Way review the redemption rates and go back to those organizations, do we know, and inquire as to why they're so low in some cases, but really good in some others? Like it goes from 74% redemption rate all the way down to 23%.
I'm not too sure.
Okay. Because
That would be a good question to ask, I think.
yeah, I'm curious because if we commit to handing out X number of passes, which I would support, I want every pass to be used. And so if an organization is getting 560 passes in one case, but only using 129, that's a number of passes that, could they go to another group, youth? So I'd just be curious if, and we could certainly reach out to Michael Graves. We've met him before. We can ask him that question. Councillor McDonald.
Knowing that the United Way is kind of administering that on our behalf in some ways, if the food bank had contacted us, could we not go to the United Way and say, hey, you typically have a percentage left over, can you support this need? Could we handle it that way where they're almost administering it for us?
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't, especially if we know that they're going to have leftovers.
Right, so then knowing they have leftover is a good thing because if there's additional need, we know that they can fulfill it.
So we refer requests to them, you
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because our MOU is with United
Yes,
Way,
that's
not
right.
with the
Right.
partner organizations of the United Way, right? So going through the United Way, yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions? Is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor McDonald?
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to prepare and execute a memorandum of understanding with the United Way of Lunenburg County for the provision of a free Bridgewater Transit Pass program with similar terms as the MOU contained in document 20-067A.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fagier. Further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is Emergency Assistance Fund for Community Organizations. And I thought that's why Diane was here. Welcome.
Thank you. So this evening I'll be speaking on behalf of the Grants to Organization Committee. We are seeking Council's endorsement of the recommendation to establish an emergency assistance fund for organizations and societies affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is something that other municipal units and provincial government organizations have provided to other people as well. So it's not a new thing. I would like to highlight that the grants to organizations was largely underspent due to the pandemic. So we're looking at a outstanding budget of about $15,900. So if we look at this from that perspective, and we want to give out grants, say, for a maximum of $1,000 and anything less, we could potentially provide up to 15 grants to community organizations that are in hardship from the pandemic. So that's the ultimate goal of this fund. So we would like council's endorsement on that recommendation and to move the outstanding budget of $15,970 to the operating reserve to be used for this initiative. The idea, again, would be to activate this ASAP, so I would work hard to get this out in the next couple days. There's already a new application form that I've developed for this specifically, and there are criteria that I've developed as well. And so we would ask that the applicants have their applications submitted by the end of the month, March 31st, and the committee would work to have the money distributed by the end of April. Any questions?
Questions from council? Councillor Caldwell?
Have organizations asked for this help?
Not specifically, no, but it is something that we've discussed through my colleagues and other opportunities, and I just think it's a good way to kind of maybe support these organizations who are struggling.
Councillor Thorburn?
Did I read somewhere the maximum amount would be $1,000? Is that?
Yeah, I kind of put $1,000 in there, but certainly we would support anything less, but I don't think we would go any higher than that, because that gives us room to give out a number of grants.
Councillor Caldwell?
If we were to support this, I have a little bit of concern with, I think we're saying if they experience a negative financial impact, I think that may be setting the bar too low. I'm not comfortable with giving out taxpayer money if these organizations have had some negative impact, but they can still function as an organization. I think the bar should be set higher. If it's a real need, say a club is in dire straits or they're having problems offering programs in the future, absolutely. But I just think that may be setting the bar a little too low. I don't want to give out $15,000 in taxpayer money if the clubs are just having some financial impact because of COVID.
So how do we measure that to make sure it's not just our balance sheet is $100 less than it was last year?
I think that falls to the grants committee to review the applications and determine what the need is. The application process does have people identifying the hardships, whether programs were canceled, whether events were canceled, whether they had an inability to raise funds to support their organization. So the application itself is a bit more specific.
Does that help you?
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Thorburn?
I know the Legion applied for a few of those when I was president, but they look at your income and they looked after the lost income of the functions that you can't do because of the COVID-19, and the expenses are still there. So you really have a negative impact, and they don't give you enough to cover you 100%, but they certainly allowed the Legion to operate on a reduced rate. And it was important for the members of the Legion to do that. And I think most organizations would present a financial budget where you could actually see the amount that they lost and what's required, and may require a little help to sustain them until things pick up.
So the checks and balances of the committee are still in place for this?
Yeah.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
Yeah.
Other questions? Councillor McDonald?
I think that there are a lot of organizations that could identify a need now, but there will be some who have not started up yet, and when they do, maybe have reduced enrollment or membership purchases or whatever, however they operate. Will this be broken up into intakes, much like our current grant process?
No. So what I've looked at is taking this back to September, starting in September of 2021 or 20 to now. So the hardships during that period of time. Once the new GTO starts, and again, we have a new policy there, so it changes things. So I think what we do is we focus on the kind of the deep part of the pandemic when we were at risk at the most, and they can go back and kind of show us that they suffered during that time period.
Other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thorburn?
I would move that Council of the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Grants to Organizations Committee as contained in document 21-026 to create an emergency assistance fund for organizations and local groups affected by COVID-19 pandemic, and to transfer the outstanding budget of $15,970 to the operating reserve to be used in the 21-22 fiscal year for this program.
Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Now, before you leave, do you want to just maybe give a little plug about the fat bikes while you're there?
I would love to. So if you're interested, there are 3 fat bikes in my office. I think maybe a couple of you have borrowed them in the last couple of weeks. One of the things I just did mention to Andrew was that the seat posts were really high. I don't know if you noticed when you wrote it.
No, it was set perfectly in
Perfectly
my
for
hand
you.
when I wrote it.
But I did have some folks come in to loan them out on Friday, and they couldn't reach the ground because they don't go down any further. So I did adapt all of them this weekend, so they are ready to go. I'm encouraging staff to use them right now. So when you're ready, come on by. They're amazing little bikes, right, Andrew?
They are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely not what I thought.
It's a lot of
They
fun.
look like they weigh a ton.
Yeah.
They weigh much less than my little scooter. Like they weigh nothing because they're carbon fiber.
Yeah.
So like you could lift them with 2 fingers. It's quite a different experience, but it was really cool. Oh,
Thanks.
yeah, Councillor
And the
McDonald.
purpose of them is for more traction on like snow. Is that what a fat bike is?
Yeah, so they have a wider tire so they can be used all year long, so not just a regular road bike or trail. You can ride them in the snow, and that's actually when I enjoy them the most.
And good on hills?
Yeah, they're good on hills.
I don't think it's the bike that determines what's good on hills as much as it is the person trying to get up the hill.
I always think that the snow might be a bit more of a comfort if you fall, but
Yeah.
it might not be. It might be just
not.
a bit.
Oh, it's not? It's
not.
not, Deputy Mayor Tanner?
It's not.
Anyway, they're there if you want to try them out sometime.
That's fantastic. Well, whatever we can do to get people more active and outdoors and
Yeah.
enjoying our trails. The weather gets better. It's going to be like 12 degrees by Thursday.
Sweet,
So.
And they'll eventually be at the LCLC so that anybody can
Not just employees,
Yeah.
anybody can use them.
Awesome.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is the Lunenburg County Accessibility Plan approval and coordinator. So this is, coming down from the province. And so we worked with our municipal colleagues around the region to come up with an accessibility plan, which council received the presentation a month ago, maybe?
Yeah, in January.
In January? I don't know, time flies. January. So there's that to approve, and then of course this requires an actual coordinator and figuring out what our path is for that. So I'll turn that over to our CAO.
Yeah. So as the mayor indicated, we've been under the Accessibility Act of Nova Scotia, municipalities have been declared public bodies. And public bodies have been required under that same piece of legislation to create an accessibility advisory committee and have an accessibility plan within 1 year of being declared a public body. So that was April 2021, the 1 year was up. But because of the pandemic, the province granted an extension to that. So it's April 2022. And plans are to be fully implemented by 2030, which is in line with the province's commitment to be fully accessible by 2030 as well. So that means that as standards are developed, municipalities as public bodies will be required to upgrade to meet those standards. The Act also requires that we update the plan every 3 years, and the reason for that is because standards change and they are still under development. So some things we don't know yet in terms of what we have to adhere to, and because of that, we'll be reviewing the plan every 3 years via the Accessibility Committee and making recommendations with respects to changes to them. The plan focuses on, or the standards, focus on goods and services, information and communication, transportation, employment, built environment, and education. And you should have recently seen a notice from the province indicating that they developed some draft standards with respects to education, which doesn't apply to the town because it's to do with schools and curriculum and the education system there, and then the built environment, which is more applicable to the town. As was indicated, we partnered with the municipal units within the county of Lunenburg, so all 5, in the development of a regional accessibility plan. and that plan was presented at a joint council meeting. The area of focus for that plan is noted. So in our plan, we have priority areas for goods and services, information and communications, transportation, employment, and the built environment. So under goods and services, we look at services and how we provide those so that we can ensure they're accessible to people with disabilities, and it could be many different forms. Service delivery, again, how we provide those as well. Physical space, and how our space and places that we deliver our services and how we adapt those to standards. Programs, and ensuring that we deliver programs that are accessible to all. Events and procurement, having a lens for accessibility in the procurement process. Internal policies and applying an accessibility lens to those, and emergency management. And then under information and communications, we'll touch things such as the delivery of communications, public meetings and how we host those, and advertising and marketing and wayfinding. In transportation, we'll look at pedestrian infrastructure, so our sidewalks, our crosswalks, snow removal, parking, transit connectivity, and transit infrastructure. And then under employment, we'll look at job opportunities, our hiring policies, the flexibility within the organization to accommodate needs, and the work environment, culture of inclusion and representation. And the built environment is probably the one that we might understand the most, would be our spaces, our buildings, our washrooms, how we undertake construction and temporary closed sidewalks, those types of things. And so, as I indicated, we have some draft standards on the built environment that the municipalities will be looking at to see how they adhere to those. But outside of that, the standards are still being developed by the province. The Accessibility Advisory Committee is the committee that's been mandated to work with the councils to review the plan every 3 years. And if we adopt this plan, we're going to be required to report on the plan every November to the Accessibility Committee. We'll do a report card on here's how we're doing. Here's what we said we'd do, and here's how we're doing that. The plan also calls for an accessibility coordinator. So remembering that this is a regional plan, the accessibility coordinator would be someone who would help guide the work of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So they'd be doing some of the administrative stuff, like booking the meetings, having the agendas prepared, assisting the committee in having the meetings and doing the follow-up work that comes out of those meetings, and acting as a liaison between the committee and the municipal units. And the individual would also be a resource. Now, originally, we're looking at a proposal that would come to the councils that would see one municipal unit host this accessibility coordinator, and it would be jointly funded because it's a regional committee and a regional plan. So you'll note that in my report to council, I note that there's a proposed budget allotment of $20,000 for that, simply because we're waiting for the details to come out. It's usually funded based on uniform assessment, so it might be less than that for the town. The plan also is, when you read the plan, you'll see it's very general, very high level, doesn't quite say exactly what we're going to do. You know, how many elevators we might need, or how many washrooms we may need to renovate and change out those types of things. So that's a very specific action plan. So that's missing. And what's recommended is that each municipal unit, because we're all different in terms of our facilities and how we provide services to a degree, that each municipal unit develop their own accessibility action plan. So that's the drill down in terms of what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. And then that provides council with a little bit more detail in terms of the financial implications of the accessibility regulations and the action plan as well. Now, to do that is going to take resources. So the accessibility coordinator is not going to be, probably not able to do that for the town of Bridgewater. Of all the municipal units, we have the most infrastructure. So we have the most sidewalks, crosswalks, the facilities. We're more complex in terms of infrastructure than some of the other rural units, municipal units are, and that's just because, you know, it's the nature of a town. So it's also recommended that we include some funds within the budget to help assist in the development of a accessibility action plan. So that could be either bringing in consultants who are familiar with the standards that are being developed and doing those audits of our facilities and our services and our policies and making recommendations with respects to how we upgrade to meet standards. And depending on the standards that get approved, that will kind of determine what type of resource we need. So it's also recommended that we, in addition to the accessibility coordinator, which would be kind of the individual that would be assisting the committee, that we include funds that will enable us to secure professional services to develop that action plan. And it's recommended that that action plan be done over the next year. And that would provide that drill down for the town with respects to what it is that we have to do. So the financial implications, it's being suggested, would be approximately $40,000. And that would lead you to the completion of an action plan by April 2022. And as I say, legally, the staff have had some discussions, and the Accessibility Act just requires a plan, and it requires it by 2022. My understanding is they're not auditing those plans. So you could say, this is our plan. It just says we're going to look at these things in broad category without committing to any particular action, and say that we've satisfied the requirements and just leave it at that. You could accept the recommendation of the committee, which would require that we take it a step further and create that action plan that says, here's what we're going to commit to doing to meet the standards as well. So the recommendation is that the advisory committee had recommended that the municipal units approve the Lunenburg County Accessibility Plan as presented, and remembering that commits you to the continuing with the Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee and a Regional Accessibility Coordinator. And then it's further recommended that we look at, you can refer it to budget if you wish, but that we also look at funding, including funding within our 2021-22 budget to enable us to drill down and develop that detailed action plan.
I find it so frustrating when another level of government says, you have to do this. So all these municipalities go through all this expense and time to make a plan, and then at the end of it they go, you don't really have to use it. You just have to create a plan you could put it on the shelf. Right? So we talk about this all the time around the table. We don't want to do another plan that sits on the shelf. It's exactly what happened with the sustainability plan way back when, where provincial government said, you just have to create a sustainability plan. You never have to look at it again. We just need you to create the plan. So some communities like Bridgewater, we hired a Leon and then built up to where we are, and others are now sitting there going, I guess we should do something about climate change. So to me, it's like this, it's the same thing. I don't understand why. Like all this to say, I hope we're going to do something, because it's such it makes no sense to force somebody to create a plan that has zero teeth or consequence for not using it.
Yeah, and I think the confusing part of it all is that by 2030, we have to have the plan fully implemented. So it does imply that at some point there is that detail and there is that implementation. It's just we're being told that you could take this plan, which is very high level, and say, here's our plan. And it's not very specific about what it is we're going to do exactly.
I feel like you're opening the door for someone on December 31st of 2029 saying, we didn't do anything, can you please fund the implementation of this plan that we never did anything about? Anyway, it just bothers me, because I'm confident that's not what we're going to do. So we're going to do the work, spend the money. Others are going to sit around and do nothing. Doesn't help anyone with any kind of accessibility needs. Are there questions? Councilor Thorburn.
Tammy, is there any funding available for that accessibility funding that will help us out?
Yeah, so we are applying for some. Right now, we're looking for some funding to offset part of the 20,000 that we put in for the development of the detailed accessibility action plan.
Okay.
And I know that regionally, we're looking for funding to offset some of the cost of the accessibility coordinator.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great, thanks.
What would be the start date of that role?
The accessibility coordinator, I would suggest it's probably not going to be till maybe the end of the first quarter. The municipal units would have to enter into an agreement and all that, so.
Other questions? Councilor McDonald.
The timing of that position, because the timing of everything's a little bit skewed now that you've thrown COVID in there. I'm looking at, we don't have provincial guidelines except for in one section, which is an important section for us. So we don't have the detail that we need from the province. We don't have a specific detailed plan for the town itself. And we don't, we're a couple of years away from the deadline, but we're gonna hire a coordinator whose primary role is to kind of keep us in check in implementing the plan.
And also to be that resource in terms of standards as they are developed. And there are some places that are using standards like the Rick Hansen standards that are kind of the default at this point. So they're doing some things, like you'll see like captions and stuff and some recordings, or so some municipalities we could do it on Teams now, that you could have the captions underneath. So they're looking at the accessibility coordinator's role would be to ensure that we're aware. But what they wouldn't necessarily be doing is doing all the audits of our facilities and saying that this doesn't meet that recommended standard.
You look like you have another question.
I'm just feeling like that position is a little bit, it's too soon for it. How do you fill that role right now with the amount of work that we would have to give them at this point?
Yeah, and that's why I'd say it's probably the end of the first quarter, so it'd be around June. So right now they have recommended standards for the built environment, and that'll probably be a big piece for us. And if those, I'm not too sure what the timing, they're out for consultation now. I'm not too sure if it's closed, but if those get approved, those would probably be the first thing that coordinator would be doing, is working with the advisory committee on that.
And it is a shared position.
It's a shared position, so.
It might be a little bit of work for us, but there'll be a little bit of work
Yeah.
for MODL and Chester and Mahone Bay.
Yeah, so I think we
Lunenburg.
figured about 7 hours a week would be town of Bridgewater, which is, we probably would, like I say, we'd include money within the budget, assuming council agreed to have those detailed action plans, but we wouldn't be necessarily hiring any consultants or professional services to come in unless we knew what those standards were. And we can always gauge the success of 7 hours a week with the accessibility coordinator too, and if we determine that that's sufficient, then there would be no need to use the remaining. It's just at this point, knowing that the amount of infrastructure we have, the concern is that 7 hours a week is not going to be enough for us to develop that plan.
Other questions?
Would we expect, if we're looking for a consultant to kind of do that inventory, would there be any, and I'm on this committee, but I've come in at the very tail end and got one meeting in before we had a plan to approve.
Yeah.
Good job.
I don't know, thank you, yes.
That's success.
Yeah, it's a good time to come in, right, when all the work's done. I don't know how much community consultation has been involved or how much we might plan to do, but it seems like a miss to me to create a plan without consulting with the people using the spaces on how to make them more usable.
Yeah, and so that's part of the advisory committee's role as well. And so when you're looking at how we adapt to the needs of our community, understanding the needs of our community is probably key to that, right? So yeah, there would definitely be some consultation, and the committee would work with the accessibility coordinator and helping determine that.
Right, okay, now I see.
Any other questions? Is someone prepared to make the first motion for the plans off. Deputy Mayor?
I move that Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the Lunenburg County Accessibility Plan as presented by the Lunenburg County Accessibility Committee and contained in document 21-027 and authorize the submission of the plan to the Provincial Accessibility Directorate.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor McDonald. We've had a good discussion. Any further? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Would you like to make the second motion as well?
Sure. Can I ask a question prior or?
No, you can ask.
following?
Yeah, go ahead.
I assume this would be a contract position initially?
The accessibility
Yeah.
coordinator? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think they were looking at a 1 or 2 year term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move that the Council for the Town of Bridgewater authorize staff to enter into negotiations for the sharing of a regional accessibility coordinator for Lunenburg County.
Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Any discussion on that?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. You have your February report for the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program. And as always, it's I don't know what we would do without it, pandemic or no pandemic. So certainly appreciate all those involved in that. Moving on, we have the the GM of the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center, Kent Walsh, with us here, and he's going to talk about the 2021-22 operating budget. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great to see you all in person. Much more friendly on the screen. So I'm just going to run through this. You've all got a copy in your agenda.
Yep.
So please interject with any questions that come up. The first kind of thing I'll just point to is you'll notice on the right hand column 2020-2021 forecast. So what I've done there is basically taken the forecast to date and interjected it there rather than the budget, because we've obviously had such a tumultuous year that we're pretty far from where the budget was. So that's why I wanted you to be able to kind of compare a little bit more apples to apples what this year looked like and what the coming year is forecasted to be. So just starting in the revenue lines and kind of going down through. My underlying assumption here is that it's been a challenging year to forecast what the coming year is going to look like, but I'm hoping that by September we'll be back into kind of our more historical pattern with our revenue streams and expenses as well. But the revenue, the summer will likely be a bit shaky as we kind of get back up to speed, but hopefully by September. So yeah, the arena is fairly kind of consistent as you would expect. Aquatic Center, a couple of little things I want to point out. In June and July, you'll see an increase in the Aquatic Center revenue. So that's revenue we get from staffing the outdoor pool for the town of Bridgewater and the lakes for the municipality. So I'll refer to it again when we get down to wages, but those are basically, it's an in and out. We absorb some wages and we get some revenue in there. In the active living lines, we've increased our summer camps by working with the town of Bridgewater, increasing our capacity for those. The rest is pretty standard fare, I would say, in the revenue side. Any questions? Going down to the expenses. So really our priorities this year, we're working on, the board is working on a strategic plan, and it'll be out shortly after our next board meeting. It'll be approved, but I didn't want to bring it forward before it was approved. But really there's a consensus around increasing communications and marketing, focusing on events, and increasing programming through the LCLC. So the first line there, advertising promotion, that's an increase over the kind of what you would have seen spent last year or in 2019-2020. So we've added some expense there, and we've also added a role to communication and marketing, which will show up in the wage line. So it's a change year over year. The rest of the expenses are pretty consistent year over year. The other big line as we move down through is obviously repair and maintenance, and then wages and benefits. So there's a few things around wages and benefits. So as I said before, we're asking for a communication and marketing staff to really tell the story of the LCLC and get more in front of promotion, those things. It'll be a role that'll also contribute to the events, attraction and delivery and that side of the facility. Staffing in pools and lakes, like I said, is included in that revenue line, or sorry, in that wage line. It wasn't before, so that also causes kind of an increase, and increased kind of cost to camp staffing. Also, there's an increase in the minimum wage, so we're absorbing some of those costs as well. And really, our focus over the last year has been to do more with the staff that we have. So we've reduced some of our expenses around groundskeeping and snow removal, things like that, just shifting it in-house. So those see reductions in one line, but increase in another. And then continuing on down the sheet, we are again, a priority is event attraction, and we're hoping to add an events reserve, $50,000 events reserve to attract special events.
Questions from council? We can't make it this easy for Ken. So, Councilor Caldwell.
Do you have a future revenue goal for future events? Is there a certain revenue target you'd like to hit? Or?
I think that our target is more about like broadening the variety of events and the number of events that we're bringing in. These special events are always going to be a challenge in terms of guaranteeing revenue. So the real strategies are offering a lot of events so that some make money and some might not, but that we end up kind of netting out at the end. Does that answer your question?
Yes, essentially it's more about service to the community than it is generating revenue for the bottom line.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that if we can look to our partners in in commerce and in the kind of economic development of the region, and if we are bringing in, attracting kind of traffic and having that payoff, it might be in the community at large just as much as it's in the facility. So it's harder to measure that way than it is on a spreadsheet, but that's really the impact that we can have through events.
Mm-hmm.
Big change this year is targeting summer ice.
Yeah, good point.
Do you want to speak to that just for a minute? I'm not sure everyone in the community is aware of that.
Yeah, good point, thank you. So it was our intention last year to keep the ice in over the summer, but once we closed on March 16th, we took the ice out on March 17th. So our goal this year is to keep the ice in all year round. It's actually been incredibly in high demand, so a lot of the seasons have been pushed so far. So minor hockey is going to continue some of their season into April, and right through there's development camps that are looking to continue, and we have our skate club, which is one of our key renters, and they'll be in the facility maintaining the same number of hours that they're doing now. So we talked a bit about the capital upgrades we're making in terms of dehumidification, which will add to the quality of the product going forward. But this summer we're going to keep the ice in and increase some of those revenues.
Other questions? Councilor Thorburn.
Just one. Is there any price increases, any anticipated price increase or putting rates up because the cost of on the expense side goes up? And when was the last time we actually increased the prices at the LCLs?
We increased our ice rate last year.
Okay.
I think it was between 4 and 8% that the rates went up, and we haven't increased membership. Some of our services are down, so it's probably the wrong time to be increasing some costs. But yeah, to your question, last year we increased ice rates.
Okay.
Other questions around the table? Is someone prepared to make a motion for the approval of the budget? Councilor Thorburn?
I will. I'd move that the council for the town of Bridgewater approve the LCLC's operating budget for the 2021-22 as presented in document 21-015A in the amount of $897,510, with each council's contribution being $448,755.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McDonald. Further discussion? I'll just add that Kent began like when COVID began. So you've navigated well the facility through not only the change with you coming on board, but at a time where, like, welcome Kent, let's close the doors. So, you know, I'm looking forward to coming out of this.
Yeah, me too.
And the other thing I think I want to add is that, and you're the chair, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in terms of a board, we're certainly more cohesive and we're more aligned in moving the facility along. So I think it makes us much more efficient, and it makes for a much better, it's going to make for a much better experience for those using the facility. Because there's a recognition that, you know, it does so many other things. So you talk about events, so maybe the event makes $0, but if it brought 1,500 people into the facility and they all went out for dinner, stayed in a hotel, gassed up their car and went shopping, that there is an economic benefit that lifts the whole region. So I think we're kind of aligned there.
Yeah, and I'd also add that, or if they experience something they'd never experienced before, you know, it's a great opportunity for the community as a whole, so, yeah.
So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks for coming
Okay.
and hanging out with us for 9 minutes for your presentation. Our last item is land acquisitions on High Street. Just for the general public's knowledge, that there is a project going to be taking place on High Street where we're going to be basically realigning, or realigning is a safe word to use, I think, the street to make it improve the vehicle and pedestrian traffic flow from Victoria Road along High Street, Dominion towards Dufferin. So that's a busier street that seems to get busier and busier, and it kind of meanders. It is not the greatest for flow of traffic. So that is what this item is. I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Just that the value, so you have the recommendation with respects to the parcels that council would be acquiring that were negotiated for purchase, and staff determined values based on similar type of right-of-way acquisitions over the past 10 years. So the value was $9 per square foot. And we had a total budget of $34,000, and the acquisitions equal $23,839. So we're within budget.
Are there any questions? So there's a separate motion for each one of these parcels. So is someone prepared to make the first motion? Councillor Frazier.
Yes, Your Worship. I move that Council for the Town of Bridgewater authorize the purchase and execution of the agreement of purchase and sale with David Stewart Ross for parcel A, being a portion of 215 High Street, for a purchase price of $3,429, and with the agreement to be generally in the form included in document 21-022A.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Caldwell. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Is someone prepared to make the second motion? Councillor Frazier.
Yes. That Council for the Town of Bridgewater authorize the purchase and execution of the agreement of purchase and sale with South Shore Nursery Limited for parcel B, being a portion of 209 High Street, for a purchase price of $3,778, and with the agreement to be generally in the form included in document 21-022A.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McDonald. Discussion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Is someone prepared to make the next motion? Councillor Frazier, you're on a roll.
All right. That Council for the Town of Bridgewater authorize the purchase and execution of the agreement of purchase and sale with John Michael Ross for parcel C and parcel D, being a portion of 193 High and adjoining vacant property, for a combined purchase price of $10,462, and with the agreement to be generally in the form included in document 2021-022A.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Discussion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Yep, for the last one.
Sure, yeah. That council for the town of Bridgewater authorize the purchase and execution of the agreement of purchase and sale with Charles F. Cushing for parcel E, being a portion of 167 High Street, for a purchase price of $6,170, and with the agreement to be generally in the form included in document 21-022A.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Any discussion? Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. Just before we go, in the spirit of International Women's Day, I just want to acknowledge the amazing women, not just around the council table, but within the town organization. We have, I posted today, we have 70% of our senior management team is women, are women. Not because we had to meet a quota or hire a certain number, but because we hire the best, and that's what we have. And so I think that's incredible. And even though we seem to be so far away from true equality, each day I hope is better than the day before. So I want to applaud all the women in the community, around the council table, and in the organization. And thank you very much. If there's nothing further, we have an in-camera meeting to deal with a property acquisition and sale. And so motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Councillor Thorburn, seconded by Councillor Brazier. We are adjourned.